Wings by Sunny Angel, Chapter 1, Town Called Malice. I'm Sunny, a single mum from Woking with one beautiful daughter, Maya, a cat called Mo and two snakes, Houdini and Jer. People have often told me I should write a book about my life. I was born on the 4th of July, 1978, at St Peter's Hospital in Chertsey, Surrey. My family lived in a village on the outskirts of Woking, a commuter town 20 miles southwest of London. My parents are Indian, Hindu Punjabis, and we were the only Indians in the village. At 16, I went to college to study A-levels, but my mother and older brother Dilip told me I wouldn't be allowed to go to university. Dilip was studying maths at Oxford at the time. Traditionally, big brothers have considerable influence and responsibility in Indian families. This attitude was far from the norm in our community, and both my brothers married university graduates, but the family envisaged an arranged marriage for me in the future, and higher education was not on the agenda. So I didn't see the point in continuing in full-time education. I dropped out of college after a year and started working, aged 17. I also took up smoking and drinking in the pub, but only at lunch times. I wasn't allowed out at night, or allowed much of a social life really, so I wasn't streetwise. I got my first job in 1995 at Modo Merchants, a paper wholesaler in Weybridge. It was a warehouse on an industrial estate. My role involved making mock-ups of books and CD covers. The pay wasn't great, but I loved being able to buy my own clothes and run a car. At work, I used to sign for the parcels that came to reception. There was an Asian delivery man who would take my signature and always gaze at me, unembarrassed, with a piercing stare. This was slightly creepy, although he was quite good-looking with a goatee beard, but I didn't pay too much attention at the time. In February 1997, I got a job at Galleon, BBC, magazine subscriptions in Woking. It was a call centre within walking distance of my parents' home. The people were nice and I enjoyed the work. Around this time, I began to sense that I was being watched. When I was driving, a car would flash me for no reason. Talking to a friend in the street, I would feel someone staring at me. But when I looked around, no one stood out. I noticed camera flashes and I believed I was being photographed. I became obsessed with the idea that I was being followed. One Saturday morning, 15th of March 1997, I planned to go to Woking Town Centre to meet a boy to sort out a misunderstanding. Just childish stuff. Even though I was now 18, I wasn't allowed out on my own without good reason. As a diversion, I went to see a girlfriend, Naz. Mum dropped me off at Naz's house. I only had 2 hours to get to town and back. I did have my own car, but Mum didn't let me use it, except for work. I asked Naz to cover for me. She wasn't entirely happy, but agreed, urging me to just get back in time. I hurried to town on foot. I took about 30 minutes as I went the long way to avoid my parents' house. I wasn't used to going into town, into Woking alone. I felt nervous. I wasn't comfortable lying and wondered whether I was doing the right thing. The sky was light grey, spring was still around the corner, and I remember feeling something wasn't right about the day. I rang the boy and arranged to meet him in the bandstand area, a slightly secluded place outside the back of the shopping centre. He arrived after me and we sat on a bench. It was early. Not many people were out shopping yet. The boy was Asian, of Pakistani origin. Like me, he wasn't supposed to hang out with the opposite sex and seemed worried about being seen in public with a female. While we were talking, the boy suddenly looked up and stared at an Asian man in his 30s, about 10 yards away, leaning against the bandstand, watching us intently. The boy blurted out nervously, "That man's a nutter," and began telling a story about the man and a girl, but he was mumbling, not making sense. I don't think he wanted the stranger to hear what he was saying. The man continued to stare, and after about a minute, he walked towards us. The boy seemed frightened as the stranger drew closer and hurriedly arranged to meet me somewhere else in 5 minutes. Whispering, "Go quickly." He stood up and disappeared swiftly into the shopping centre where he worked. The stranger approached, staring straight at me. As I stood to leave, he strode right up to me, blocking my path. I tried to walk around him, but he stepped sideways and held his arm out in front of me. The stranger was only a little taller than me, but carried himself confidently. He had waxed, shiny hair and thick black eyebrows that perched above dark brown eyes. bloodshot eyes, which bored into mine. I looked away, overpowered, then back at the stranger, who held my gaze like a cobra with its prey. The corners of his mouth pointed down slightly, like he knew pain. "Excuse me," I protested, trying to get past. My mouth was dry. There was no one else around. "You shouldn't speak to that boy, Sunita." I was stunned. How did he know my name? "Your name is Sunita, isn't it? Stay away from that boy, I warn you. He might rape you. I've been looking out for you." A chill ran down my spine, but I felt I had to say something. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" "I've been watching you, Sunita, for a long time. Following you. You drive a white Nissan, don't you? You parked on the corner by the car park the other day, didn't you? You wore a skirt and boots on Friday. You smoke, don't you? And drink. Your family don't care about you much, do they?" This was scary. Everything the stranger said was true. Then he added, "I loved and lost a Sunita once. Tell me, could you be my Sunita?" He sounded disturbed. "I'm sorry you lost a Sunita. No, I'm not her. I had a feeling someone was following me. Now I know I'm right. You're a nutter. Please go away. Leave me alone." As I tried to walk away, he grabbed my wrist and forcefully pulled me towards him. "I know where you live. You will do what I say. My name is Raj. I'm Indian like you." He seemed to make a point of saying that. "I'm one of you." Raj is a popular Indian name that comes from the ancient Sanskrit for king. Still gripping tightly, Raj told me, "I know about your family. I've been watching them too. There's your mum and dad and two brothers. I know what time they all leave and come back to the house." I tried to twist my arm free but couldn't. Even my bones felt Raj's grip. "Why are you doing this?" "I don't know you. Have I ever hurt you?" I asked. Raj clarified his intentions. "I always get what I want, and I will get you." Then he let go of me. I laughed nervously and tried to walk on, but he stood in the way again and recited my number plate, Dad's number plate, and told me where Mum worked. When Raj explained that he used to work for a parcel delivery company, the penny dropped. He was the delivery man from my first workplace, now clean-shaven. "I used to follow you on the train when you went to college. I'd been on a day release course at my previous job." Raj seemed more proud than embarrassed by his revelation, adding, "It was rude of you not to acknowledge me." My chest felt heavy. It was breathless. But now knew I'd been right about being followed. I'd forgotten to keep an eye on the time. My mobile phone rang. It was Naz, panicking. Mum had turned up at her house early, so Naz had to tell her I'd gone into town. Now I had to call Mum, who didn't even know I owned a mobile. My big brother Dilip had set up a phone contract for me in his name when I was 17, without my parents' knowledge, as they wouldn't have approved. Mum shouted, "Where the hell are you?" and arranged to come and pick me up. Raj listened to my conversation and teased me. "I can't believe you lied. That's so bad. What are you going to tell your mum now? Tell her you're with me." "What? No way. If my mum sees me with a man, she'll kill me." Raj put his arm round me. I didn't try to stop him. He wasn't using force now, so it seemed safer that way. He whispered, "Your mum doesn't care about you," before adding, "May God protect you from evil." Then he wrote a landline number on a scrap of paper and put it in my pocket. I wanted to rip it up, but I was frightened of his response. Raj stayed with me while I waited for Mum. When I saw her pulling up, I moved away quickly from Raj, who melted into the background, promising, "I know where you are. You'll be seeing me."